Hi everyone, thanks for joining me tonight for paint night. Tonight we're going to be making a winter landscape, and the setup that you need is going to look something like this. You'll have a cup of water, paper towel, a couple paintbrushes, a paper plate with some paint colors on it, and your canvas. Underneath your canvas, you should also make sure that you have newspaper, so at cleanup time it'll be really easy. We won't have to wash the tables. So on your paper plate, you should have phthalo blue and some white. In the video screen here, it looks like black, but this is actually phthalo blue, and you'll see once I start to mix the paint. So using just the end of my brush, I'm going to make a little pile of the phthalo blue, and I'm bringing the white into it to lighten it. I don't want to make this too light because it is the background sky color for my winter landscape, and this landscape is in the evening or the nighttime while it's snowing, so we're going to have a nice dark blue background. I'm starting at the top of the canvas and using horizontal brush strokes left to right. I'm filling in with a nice flat layer of the phthalo blue and white mixture. Going back and forth with that brush to really spread out the paint across the whole canvas. I'm going to speed this up. It took me, I think, about 5 minutes to cover the whole canvas. And if you run out of your mixture, just make another little pile for yourself. You want to go all the way to the edge of the canvas. If you mix your color again, you run out and you mix your new color, if it's not exact, don't worry about it, because as you're blending this back and forth, it'll naturally blend together as long as that acrylic paint is still wet. I'm making sure to put down a thin layer because we have to wait for it to dry a little bit before we put down the layers of snowy background. So don't put that first layer on too thick or you're going to be hanging out here all night waiting for it to dry. So once I get that finished, I'll scrub the brush in the cup, wipe it on the paper towel, and make sure, let me make that large again, make sure that your brush is completely clean before you let this background dry. So here I can see there's still some blue in that brush. When I wiped it on the paper towel, it did not come out clean, so it needs to be rinsed again. And then you can leave it on your paper towel while the background is drying. If your paintbrush is still dirty, you can leave it in your cup if you're going to be using a similar color. We don't want the acrylic paint to dry inside the bristles because once it does, it's very, very difficult, almost impossible at times to get it out, and we might have to throw out that brush. So keep your brush in the water or clean it really good before you put it on the paper towel. So now we're going to let this layer dry before we put in the snow. So this is a good time to pause the video if you want to go take a restroom break or get a snack or just stretch your legs. When you're ready to move on, we're going to be creating the snowy layers. So to create the snowy layers, we need a dry canvas, a white charcoal pencil, and we were using the phthalo blue and white before. Now we'll be using the ultramarine blue. So that looks a little bit lighter, and the white. So to start, I'm going to break up the bottom of the canvas into some snowy layers. So I'm starting on the left, a little higher than the right side, and I'm bringing it down. There is no right or wrong way to create the snowy layers. You can have your layers be very horizontal. They could curve more than mine, but we want 3 lines. So 3 lines to make the 3 layers of snow. And for this, I'm going to switch to one of the smaller size brushes. I was using the largest brush for the background. For the layers, I want them a little bit smaller so I have more control. I'm starting with the white this time. For our background, we started with the blue and added the white in because we were keeping it really dark. For the snowy layers, we want really light layers of snow. So I'm starting with the white and adding the blue into it. If I started with the blue and tried to add in the white, I'd end up using a ton of white for this to get it to lighten that much. So for mixing a light color, you want to start with a white base. And the blue that I mixed isn't the lightest blue that I can have for my snowy landscape because I want my front layer to be mostly white so it looks more like snow. So this is my mid-tone. So my front layer below what I'm painting now is going to be practically white. The mid layer is going to be a very light blue, and the layer above it is going to be a little bit of a darker blue. So I'm starting with my mid-tone of the 3 snowy layers. As you're working with the paint, try to keep the paint just on the front half of your bristles. If you get paint all the way down, like where that metal part is, where it connects to the handle, you got too much paint on the brush. You want to wash that off. When your paintbrush gets loaded down with paint, you actually don't have a lot of control over it. It's better to keep smaller amounts on your brush so you can control it more. So as I'm letting this mid-tone dry, I'm going to go in and put down a layer of white. If a little bit of your background is showing through still, that's okay. For the snow, we're mixing the whites and the blues together. So this is snow in the evening. So it's not going to be pure white like a piece of paper. It's going to have a bluish tint to it from the dark sky and the shadows around. You can have a little bit of that dark phthalo blue showing through, and it's going to look like shadows on your snow. I'm going to speed this up a little bit more. If you would like to put down a second layer of snow, you can allow your first layer to dry in between and then just mix up or add another layer. But remember, we don't want to glob this on. If you put down too much paint, it's going to take all night to dry. And now my top layer is going to be lighter than the background because I want it to show, but darker than that mid-tone. So we're creating almost a value scale here with the background being the darkest, and then a dark snowy layer, a medium snowy layer, and the lightest layer, which you can have very light blue or you can keep it white. After you do these layers, you're going to want to make sure to really do a nice job washing that brush. And we'll let this dry before we put in our tree and our fence. So we have a few more minutes to take a break to let this layer dry.